I know when I started first powerlifting about 5-6 years ago, one of the biggest questions I had was what percentage to program certain variations on. We know for the most part what our training max or our 1RM is on our competition squat, bench, and deadlift, but variations such as pause squats, tempo squats, 3-second pause bench, pause deadlifts, all these different types of variations and or bars, safety bar, cambered bar, any of these different things we can use. It wasn't anywhere online that I saw that had some kind of solid guide or at least a starting point of understanding where we could kind of get an idea of where these variations would kind of fall within the percentage of our 1RM. So over the course of my coaching career, I've kind of gotten a better idea of that. I kind of have an understanding of all these different variations that I program, what I typically see most people able to do on those. And the most popular article on my website, by far, it probably gets more than 50% plus of the total visits and views on my website, is the article, What Percentages to Use on Your Variations. And I'm actually going to link that below because in this video, I'm going to cover that briefly and go over kind of the variations that I typically program and kind of the general percentage of your normal competition movement that you should typically use. But I've got that all listed on that article. Everything is there. So for your ability to be able to just kind of have a quick reference, definitely use that link below and you can be able to access that. More so what I want to get into within this video is like, okay, so you see these percentages of your 1RM, of your normal regular competition squat, bench, and deadlift, and these variations. Well, how do we program that? How do we actually implement that within the program, especially if we're stacking variations? I'm gonna go through some pretty complicated variations that maybe I wouldn't even use per se, but just to give an example of kind of how we can stack these and be able to still be able to understand what weight we should be using by taking all this information and combining it. And one of the biggest things I should note with all this is that there's going to be outliers. This is not a 100% guarantee. Take this percentage that I recommend and it's going to be perfect for you. There is going to be outliers. I'm just taking this from my experience. I've seen just general strength on these variations from my athletes, from different body types and mechanics and weight classes and male and female, all that kind of take into account and kind of just giving this general breakdown. So if you don't fit perfectly in this, that could be completely normal. There's going to be people that are going to be above or below the percentage that I recommend. So it just kind of takes you being able to experiment with it. But hopefully this is one, will give you kind of a starting point of where you think you can start. But two, and even more so, like I said within this video, is I want to more so break down how we can program this so that you can be able to implement these variations and not just have a generic weight that you're throwing out there, because that's usually what I see a lot of times. Like I can't say how many times, I don't know why it's like the set in stone number, but you got pause squats, 3 sets of 5 at 75%. I always see 75% for all of these, and that's meaning 75% of your regular competition max, and that really doesn't mean much. Like we need a lot more than just do 75%. So that's what I really want to hopefully be able to outline within this video, is how we can be able to actually program these to have a better understanding of what we should be putting on the bar. So let's get right on into it. Let's look at squat, bench, and deadlift and kind of go over the variations I'm used to. There's some that you're not going to see on here. Like I don't personally use very many bands and chains. There's some specialty bars I don't use too often. So I'm not going to include those because I don't have experience with that. That would be outside of my realm. There's some other people that probably have videos out or content on Instagram or where not that's going to be able to give you much better information on some of those variations. But let's go through the squat, bench, and deadlift with the variations that I feel more proficient on and confident in programming to be able to give you kind of a general idea of the percentage you should be doing, and then let's take a look at kind of actually how to program those. So looking at squat first. So I have, I believe, 8 different variations here. We have high bar, safety bar, buffalo bar, camber bar, tempo, pause, pin, and front squat. So kind of giving you a brief breakdown. Obviously we have the variations here. We have the percentages of kind of generally where I program those, and then some notes I'm going to kind of go through real quick. And as I mentioned, I'm going to go through this quick because all of this is on that article. So if you want to be able to reference any of this information to pick out a very specific variation, click that article up below. But one of the biggest things that's going to kind of change these percentages that you're going to use is, one, you as an individual and kind of your general leverages and mechanics. And then two is you just doing these exercises. Like obviously if you start one of these exercises like a safety bar, I mentioned here, most athletes will have to start lighter, but as they build up, they should be able to tolerate more, around 90% of their 1RM. What I mean by that is you're probably not going to be very good at this exercise if you've never done it before. You're going to be weak at it because it is a different pattern than a regular low bar squat. But as you get better at a safety bar, the safety bar percentage is going to go up, and hopefully that correlates to your low bar squat as well. But more so, what we're really looking at is like as over time, your safety bar 1RM is going to get closer to your low bar 1RM, and that's why these are more of where to start at, and then over time that's probably going to increase. So, but high bar and safety bar together, both of those are very dictated on someone's general mechanics. You've probably seen high bar squatters. Many of them that are really, really good tend to have longer torsos and shorter femurs as they're able to stay more upright. Which they're going to be able to high bar more than someone with longer femurs and a short torso. So same kind of goes for safety bar as well. Buffalo bar, for most people, if you ever used the buffalo bar before, once you get used to it, you pretty much can handle your normal 1RM on your comp squat. So it's not too different. They're just a slightly different kind of weight distribution because of how that bar bends, but otherwise not so much. Cambered bar, fairly similar to a safety bar and just being a different bar that you have to get used to, and then once you do, usually can kind of start to increase that. Tempo squat, I wanted to specifically pick this one out because we're going to talk about a couple of variations that they change based on how many reps you do. So a tempo squat increases time under tension. If we're doing a 3-second tempo, every rep that is now, let's say our normal descent is 1 second. So if we're doing a 3-second descent now, an eccentric, every rep that is 2 more seconds under tension than we normally would be. So this is not only a percentage of distribution of kind of looking at kind of generally where people are, it's also a percentage of distribution of probably on the higher end of 92.5%, maybe if you're doing 1 to 2 reps. The lower end of 87.5% may be 6 or 7 reps. So it's as we get to kind of how to program, I'm going to kind of show how I do that, because we not only need to program based off of a tempo squat being more difficult, so it's a difference in your 1RM, we also have to change that based off of how many reps we are doing. And then lastly here we got pause squat, pin squat, and then front squat with some variations. Like I said, I'm not going to cover these in detail because easily you can go read those on the article. For bench press, we've got close grip. So one thing I want to notate with close grip, when I program a close grip bench press, it is not what you typically think of as like a bodybuilding bench press where you go super close. It's very different, very tricep dominant. Close grip to me is 3 fingers inside your normal grip. So if you normally have your, let's say, max grip width for index finger on the knurling marker, that would mean pinky finger on the knurling marker, 3 fingers in. And then same with wide grip, and this is just close grip versus wide grip. That my programming of those is going to be dependent on someone's natural grip. If they're naturally closer, we're probably going to upload some wide grip. If they're naturally wide grip, we're not going to program wide grip because they're already wide. We're going to program close. So wide grip, same as close grip, is usually going to be 3 fingers wider than what your normal competition grip is. We've got tempo. So tempo and 3-second pause, just like I mentioned on squat, that's going to be very rep dependent. So not only is it going to be self-limiting in the sense of just being a little bit harder, so we're going to program down in the percentage from our normal 1RM, but we also have to change that based on how many reps we're doing because of the time under tension. Going through the rest of these, we have Spoto press, pin press, t-shirt touch press, all fairly similar in kind of how we're just changing that pause height. So again, that's pretty similar in kind of the percentages. Feet up or Larson is a bit different based off if you do feet up or you do Larson. So feet up is meaning your feet's actually up on the bench. And typically what that's going to do is that's going to create more of a, it's going to be harder to arch, and it's going to be a little bit more flat back. So you're going to have more range of motion. So that's going to be more on that 90% range. Larson, since your feet are hanging, you typically can get a little bit more of an arch and a better position. So that's going to be maybe up 92 to 95%, so a little bit more weight on Larson. And then lastly here, I'll be honest that I've used these, but I'm not super experienced on them. So this is just kind of a general starting point of where to be. But you have your slingshot, and that's obviously going to depend on which slingshot you have as well, as there's different different strengths of those. And then 1 or 2 board. I put 100% meaning the same, because a lot of people actually on like a 1 board aren't that much stronger. A lot of times once you get to a 2 board is where people are going to start to see a bit of an increase, but that's just dependent on each person. And then lastly here, we've got deadlifts. So pause off the floor, pause just below the knees. A lot of the pausing off the floor especially is going to be dependent on your positioning off the floor. A better position off the floor is probably going to make that pause a bit stronger versus if you have weak positioning off the floor, that pause is going to be a little bit harder and punish you a little bit more, aka why we're pausing off the floor. And then same thing with pause just below the knees. If we're pausing just below the knees or off the floor, usually that's kind of to pinpoint a certain position within the movement where we are struggling with and trying to improve that. So typically I see around 90-95% or 92.9 to 95% with the off the floor versus the just below the knees. Tempo deadlifts, very similar to some other tempo things I said. That's going to be very rep dependent. 2-inch deficit I put here, that is only for conventional deadlifters. I personally never program any deficits for sumo pullers. I know other people might do that. I just don't, so I don't have any input on that. This is simply for conventional pullers. 2-inch block pulls, 97.5 to 107.5, because if you're a conventional puller, you probably actually, maybe if you pull from 2-inch blocks, you've noticed it isn't really that much easier, and sometimes it's actually harder because you're not used to it. Whereas sumo deadlifters, they definitely get a really big bump in their strength by going to blocks. I don't typically program higher than 2-inch blocks. Usually that's just a very slight elevation that I program from. That's why I included that. Obviously, if you are increasing that, such as something like a rack pull below the knee, that's going to increase the percentage. And then specialty bar here, trap bar, I program that anywhere between 100 to 110%, and that's going to depend on just one, your general strength of the trap bar, but two, if you're using the low or the high handles. If you're using the low handles, that's probably going to be pretty close to your normal 1RM. If you're using the high handles, that's going to be a different movement because it's kind of a higher starting point, so that's going to be a bit higher percentage. And then lastly here, we've got Romanian deadlifts, so I program that around 80 to 85%. And that's going to be somewhat dependent on if you're a conventional or a sumo puller. Typically what you're going to find is conventional pullers are a bit stronger at Romanian deadlifts because it's a bit more specific and a bit closer in relation to a conventional to a Romanian deadlift versus a sumo to a Romanian deadlift. All right, so now that we got a little better idea of kind of the variations I'm going to be talking about and kind of the percentages, let's look at how to program those. And if you want to, you can even pull that, might not even be a bad idea to pull up that article so you can be able to see the percentages as they go along, but I'll try and go back and forth to kind of show you kind of what I'm discussing and kind of where I'm getting these numbers from. So first and foremost, one of the biggest things we need to understand when programming these is understanding percentages versus RPE. So this is the percentage and RPE chart I've used. It's personally just the most accurate one I've found. There's a bunch of different ones you can find online. This one actually I came across when I was coached by Hanny Jezarelli from The Strength Athlete, because this is what they used. I forget who they got this from, but this is readily available online. But this one, still to this day, is the one that I find the most accurate. And so not only are you seeing kind of how many reps you can do at certain percentages, but we can see here how many reps you can do at a certain RPE. So if we wanted to do 8 RPE for 3 reps, that's about 86.3%. And then you can see, I mean, all over here, as you can see the differences in those. And one of the things I want to point out is that RPE and percentages aren't two different things, entirely different things. They're two different ways to come to the same exact solution per se. It's just that RPE allows a little bit more auto-regulation, because just because it says that 6 reps should be 83.7%, one, your 83.7% is going to be different day to day based on your strength levels. And then two, everyone's a little bit different for what these numbers are. These are not perfectly accurate. If you are a taller lifter that requires a lot of range of motion on the squat, I can pretty much guarantee that you're not going to be able to do 8 reps at 78.6%. You're probably going to do maybe more like 5 or 6, because the range of motion is now changing the distance traveled and in a sense the total workload done per rep, versus the opposite. Some people will be able to do 80% for a ton of reps. I'll actually link a post I made on Instagram kind of about this, because there was and it kind of breaks this down of understanding kind of how we deviate with the amount of reps we do based off of range of motion and multiple factors with body segment length and our body weight and male versus female. And one of the things I talk about within that article is there was a study done, and I think that it was 80%. They had people, or maybe it was 75%. They had people do 75% of their 1RM on squat for a max rep test. And according to this, you should probably get around 9 to 10. But what people actually found is that I think it ranged anywhere from like 7 to 28 reps. And that was the biggest correlating factors was femur length and then body weight. I'm not sure if they did height, but I would very much guess height would be correlating as well, because again, it goes back to range of motion and total workload, because total workload is not only sets times reps times weight, we have to include distance travel, because that's going to change each person based off the distance they travel per rep. So this can, like I said, you can find this anywhere online if you just search percentage chart. For powerlifting, you'll probably find the same one pop up somewhere, and you can use this for kind of reference if you'd like. But getting into how to program for percentages, I will lead off by saying, if I can, I am going to probably program based off of RPE for most variations. That would be a better solution since we don't have to guess at these percentages. But you're going to see why this is important. Not only one, so that you know how to program if you're going to do percentages in case you have someone who's not very fluent with RPE or comfortable with it. But two, even if I program RPE, I'm still going to include a range. And so I still need to know how to calculate these. So let's take a look at everything. So we're going to go with the fact that just the understanding of a squat max of 400, a bench max of 300, and a deadlift max of 500. That's our estimated 1RMs that we're working off of. So, and for the most part, you can see here as I scroll down, we're just going to do sets of 5. This is just a general framework, not to go through every single possible variation or possible rep range. This is just taking the RPE chart and the percentages here and then putting them together. So if we have a competition squat, you can see here, M round of our squat max. If I want to go to and everything here is programmed at an 8 RPE. So 8 RPE at 5 reps is 81.1%. So that's why I have this here. M round is the function just to round to the nearest 5. I have B2, which is the column here, and then times 0.88811 for 8 RPE at 5 reps, which is 81.1%. And then 5 here is just the rounding. So now I want to do a pause squat. So how do I do that? So what I do here, is we have all we need to add there is times 92.5%. So if I'm going back to pause squat, 92 to 94, I would say most people I start around at 92.5%. So to program based off of this, what I'm going to do, and I'll just do it, I showed you there, but I'll do it real time, is M round of B2 times 0.811 to be at an 8 RPE for 5 reps times 0.925 since the a pause squat, rounding the nearest 5, and then boom, we have 300, and that's how I got there. If we're going to do a safety bar pause squat, we're taking that same calculation. I can literally just copy and paste this here, but we're going to add a safety bar. And as you can see here, we have 0.9, which is the safety bar. We have 0.925, which is the pause squat, and then we have the percentage, 8 RPE at 5 reps. So if I want to take the same calculation, all I need to do here is times by 0.9 to add in the safety bar. So I get that 270, and that's kind of how we're going to be able to calculate that general idea. So competition tempo squat. This is where it's going to be a little bit different though, because I mentioned with the tempo, we're going to have the variability of how many reps we do changing the difficulty because it's really changing the time under tension. Now you could argue pause squats changing time under tension too, but I don't see as much deviation there with more reps. It's more tempo squats or a long pause, like a 3-second pause, or like a 3-second pause bench, or a long pause deadlift, or tempo pause deadlifts. Things that really add significant time under tension over what the norm is, where I see just a regular pause squat not doing that nearly as much. So I don't usually take that into account as much as I don't see a real need to. So with here, we've got one set of a single on a tempo squat. So what I've got here is I've got 90.7 as the percentage. So if I do 1 rep at an 8 RPE, actually I did that wrong, it should be 92.2%. So let's actually change that. 92.2% for an 8 RPE. For the tempo, I have 0.925. So you're going to see here, I said tempo is 87.5 to 92.5%. So it's going to adjust. If I want to do a set of 5, I need to change that. So I'm going to copy and paste this down here. So right now I have this as if I did 1 rep. If I was going to do 2 reps, I'm going to take away 1%. So now it's 91.5. 3 reps, 905. 4 reps, 895. Oops. And if I want to get to a 5th rep, I'm going to go another percent, 885. But then also, obviously, this is no longer 1 rep at an 8 RP. It's 5 reps at an 8 RP. I need to change to 81.1%. So that's going to give me 285. So obviously, one of the big changes there is I had to change the percentage because obviously we're changing reps. But more so, every rep I did, I went 1 more percent And that's kind of how while there's no direct science or evidence backing that, that is just kind of have what I found and what seems to correlate well when I'm programming percentage based when it comes to something like a tempo squat, and programming those based on how many reps we are doing. Is I start at kind of a top end, which I gave the top end within that article and before here. And then from there, I just keep decreasing 1% for every rep we add. And so that can get pretty complicated. Let's say we did a high bar tempo pause squat now. So I'm actually going to program this real, and you're going to see kind of how this comes out. Let's program this real time. So I have the 81.1% for an 8 RPE times high bar, we're going to go 0.9, times a tempo at 5 reps, that's going to be 885, times 0.925 for a pause squat. There's a lot going on there. What did I do different here? Oh, I did high bar here as 925, so that's completely fine. So it's just dependent on the person. So let's say high bar was 92.5% for this person. So there was a lot going in here, all stacking to be able to create this variation. And that's kind of where it can get a little bit more complicated. And while this, I can't say this is going to be 100% accurate for you, it at least gives you a framework for how to program this if you have no idea where to start from. And it's always better to start conservative and then go up from there, because once you program it, you can get an idea kind of how difficult it was and kind of more about what your percentages are. And the more and more you do it, you'll have a better and better idea. So moving on to bench press, all this applies the same way. So we have competition bench press. 5 reps at an 8 RPE is 81.1%. If we want to do close grip, usually I program close grip at 97%, so I just need to do times 0.97. But let's say I want to do a 3-second bench, pause bench press, 3-second pause bench press. That's going to change the time under tension. So just very much like that tempo squat, here I've got a close grip 3-second pause bench press, so 92.2% for an 8 RPE at 1 rep, 97 times 0.97 because it's close grip, and then times 0.97 because it's a 3-second pause. So if I'm going to do that same variation for 5 reps though, I need to start decreasing. For 2 reps, that's 9.6. For 3 reps, 9.5. For 4 reps, 9.4. For 5 reps, 9.3 for that 3-second pause. And then I'll need to go back and change that RPE, or the percentage, to match the RPE I want at 5 reps, and we've got 220 there. So same thing applies for tempo bench press. That's going to adjust as well. I'm probably going to start at about 0.97 for a tempo bench press if it was 1 rep, and then every rep after we're going to decrease by 1% until we get to 9.3 for a set of 5. For Larson close grip bench press, so just stacking 2 movements. Let's go through this one again as well. So if I have 5 reps, I have Larson, so we're going to go 0.94 for Larson, and then we're going to go 0.97 for close grip bench. Let me put that down there. You can see there, I've got 0.93. Actually, I did 0.93 versus 9.4 there. Like I said, that can be just finding your own personal range. 0.93 for Larson, 0.97 for bench press. I'm able to stack those to create this variation and give me a general number to be at for that 5 reps at an 8 RPE. And then same thing with a t-shirt touch bench press. I have a Larson at 9.3, and then I have t-shirt touch at 0.94. Lastly, let's go over the competition deadlift. So set of 5 at 81.1%. If we do a pause deadlift, we're going to put that at 92.5% of our normal 1RM. So we're just going to stack that on to 81.1, which gives us 375. If we want to do a 2-inch deficit, I put that at 90% of our normal 1RM. If we want to do a deficit deadlift to a tempo, so we not only then have to stack the 0.9, we also need to stack another 0.9, as well as, again, changing to an 8 RPE at a 1, so we got 375. If we want to change that now to 5 reps with a tempo, that's going to be a decent little change. So I'm going to have to go 0.89 for 2 reps, 8.8 for 3, 8.7 for 4, 8.6 if I want to do 5 reps, and that's going to then change. So and that needs to change to 811, and this needs to change to 811 as well, since we are at 5 reps now. Romanian deadlift, you're just taking that times 0.8, so that's obviously a pretty big drop just due to the variation, but just simply taking the normal competition lift here, which is your max times the percentage, and then times that by 0.8 for a Romanian deadlift. And then trap bar, a little bit different than anyone we did. we actually have to increase the weight. So we're doing the normal calculation, but then we're doing times 1.05 because we're actually having a 5% bump from our normal weight because we're doing a trap bar deadlift. So like I said, if I can, I'm gonna program these RPE based, but we still need to know how to do this, because if I'm gonna program RPE, I could just do one set of 5 at an 8 RPE. I could just do that. I'm not gonna say, I really prefer to give my athletes more guidance than just saying at 8 RPE. Even on a competition movement, if I'm giving RPE, I like to give a range. So what we can do to help guide this athlete is not just say at 8 RPE, we can give them a range. So if I know a pause squat, going back, is 300, and that's because we're going 0.925%. That's in between. I can give a 15, since the squat, the squat's decently heavy, I'm gonna give a 15-pound range each way. So I'm gonna go 285 to 315, 15 pounds below or 15 pounds above, to give them a bit of kind of a range there of what they should do for their 8 RPE. Same thing with close grip 3-second bench press. So if I'm gonna do a close grip bench press, I can go take this number here, which is the percentage, 8 RPE at a 5, which is about 81.1, 0.97 because of close grip, and then 0.93 because of the 3-second pause. From there, it's 220, and then I'll give, since it's bench press and it's a little lower weight, just percentage-wise, we don't need to do as much of a variation, I'll give them a range of 210 to 230 for their 8 RPE, so they have a general idea of kind of where to be. And then lastly, pause deadlift, same concept here. We've got our pause deadlift. We've got 0.925 due to the pause, so that gives us 375. Just like squat, I'm gonna go 15 below or above, 360 to 390 at an 8 RPE to give them a little bit of range. Obviously at 375, smack dab in the middle. Most athletes are gonna, without even you telling them, they're going to assume the middle of that is where they should be at. And then just based on how they're feeling, they're gonna go up and down from that. So that just really helps to kind of, one, give them a range, but also allow them to regulate. But also for you, because you know how to program the percentage, you can actually make that range for them versus just saying 8 RPE and then hoping they get it right. You can help to give them some guidance by having that range because you know how to program with those percentages based off all of these estimations of general strength levels on these variations. So hopefully that gave you a better idea of kind of how to program variations. Not only if you haven't read that article before on my website, one, giving you an idea kind of where to start at, but two, now being able to take those and actually know how to program those within your actual training plan, whether it's percentage based or whether it's RPE and adding a range. And that should really just kind of help most people to be able to kind of get a better starting point of what they should be. And from there, develop what you should do on your own. This is really just to kind of give you a guideline of if you've never done this variation before, you have no idea where to start, here's a general idea where to start. And then as you do that, you're obviously, for yourself, you're gonna get a much better idea of kind of your strength levels on that and be able to get a better gist of kind of where you should be programming that. So if you feel like you got a lot out of this, make sure to share this, let some other people know about it so they can have this knowledge too. Make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can be able to be updated whenever I put new videos on. Like this video so we can be able to get a little bit more outreach. And then any comments you have or any questions below, leave that in the comment section. I'll make sure to get back to you. All right, I'll talk to you later.